15 creepy Disney urban legends that will freak you out. If you are brand new to our channel, we invite you to take a moment to subscribe. Just click on the lit red button as well as the gray bell. Why the bell? Well, it will let you know every time we post a new video. 9. Walt Disney froze himself. We're pretty sure that everyone knows this urban legend. Walt Disney was said to have cryogenically frozen himself so that he would never actually die. The legend says that liquid nitrogen was used so that he could await the day that a necromancer could figure out how to reanimate people. This rumor was started after people noticed there was a stark lack of information about Walt Disney's burial arrangements and funeral. Many still say that this is a false statement, but those records have never been released, which keeps this common Disney myth alive and well, even though there's no basis for the story. This isn't the animator's only spin at playing God. He also has a very strange and substantial property in his will that goes to the very first man to bear a child. It seems that Walt Disney was very interested in the scientific anomalies that could be accomplished, including being brought back from the dead. 10. No long-haired men allowed. When the park was started in the 1950s, none of the men that were employed by Disney were allowed to have beards, mustaches, or even long hair. This was based on the common bias of the 50s and 60s, that a beard implied a person was a beatnik and hippie, which obviously meant that they were involved in un-American activities. In this time, Disney had a philosophy that Disney park patrons preferred wholesome attendance, so they also applied the rule to guests. At one point, it even included women in halter tops and the popular 1960s Beatles-style haircut. In 1964, Jim McGinn, founder of the Birds and lover of the Beatles' haircut, was turned away from the park. By the 70s, the guest restrictions had been pretty much lifted, but the same rules applied to attendance and characters. It wasn't until the year 2000 that Disneyland relaxed their rules for park employees, but only enough so that the men could sport tightly trimmed mustaches. 11. Toy Story and The Shining. Strangely enough, parts of Stanley Kubrick's cult classic horror film The Shining can be found throughout the Toy Story trilogy. The very first accidental shining Easter egg in Toy Story was in the scene where Buzz and Woody are trying to escape from evil twin Sid's house. The carpet in the hallway outside of Sid's bedroom is the exact same carpet from the hallways in the vintage horror classic. Another apparent coincidence is the number 237 constantly showing up in the third volume of the Toy Story films. This is the same room in The Shining, where Jack Nicholson was making out with the hot woman who turns into a rotting corpse. That number shows up on a garbage truck, a security camera, and on a computer chat Woody is having in the third movie. The only coincidence, however, is the matching carpet in the first film. But this could be what drove director Lee Unkrich to direct the third film and put in all the fun Shining and Easter eggs. 12. The bellhop that haunts Platform D. Platform D at Disney's famous Tower of Terror is apparently haunted by a former bellhop or cast member of the ride. The ride features 4 platforms named Alpha, Beta, Charlie, and Delta that feed into 2 shafts with the monikers Echo and Foxtrot. As the story goes, while a bellhop was working Platform Delta, he suddenly dropped dead. In every telling of the urban legend, the cause of death has been unknown, adding even more mystery to this Disney ghost story. At the end of each night, the cast members will ride through each platform to ensure that everything is all good on the ride before closing. It seems that everyone who has worked this attraction at Disneyland parks will ride platforms A, B, and C together, and then all get together to ride Platform D. The reason all of these Disney cast members are so freaked out is because it seems that the dead bellhop never left and many hauntings have occurred. 13. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride was a bridge to hell. As one of the darkest themed rides at Disneyland Park in Anaheim, California, we're not surprised to see it on the list of creepy Disney urban legends. This was the last ride left at the park that was there at the original opening of the gates in 1955, and is based on the film The Wind in the Willows. In the ride there is a scene featured that is meant to be a tongue-in-cheek scene styled after hell itself. When I was a little girl, I actually cried for about half an hour after going on the ride. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride was finally shut down in 1998 after tons of protests from park-goers. Even though his Wild Ride is no longer featured at the park, little parts of Mr. Toad are still littered around the cartoon wonderland. His statue is located in the Pet Cemetery at the Haunted Mansion, and murals of the characters can still be spotted at the end of what is now the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. 14. Mouse Suicide. The moniker Suicide Mouse is a lost 9-minute Mickey Mouse cartoon from the beginning days of the character. Sometimes the video is called Mickey Mouse in Hell. In the film, the mouse is walking through a normal scene, first to eerie piano music, and then to white noise. The whole cartoon goes black until the 6-minute mark, when Mickey begins walking again at the same pace with voices speaking in the background. As the beloved cartoon mouse walks, the music distorts into ghoulish voices and shrill screaming as Mickey's face becomes just as distorted. Over the next 2 to 3 minutes, the mouse's smile becomes ghoulish, skinless, and downright demonic. The last scene of the cartoon is the usual smiling Mickey face with Russian text at the bottom of the page. This text has been translated as "The sights of hell brings its viewers back in." No one knows where this cartoon originated or if it has been doctored, but finding it online is a fun way to really creep ourselves out. 15. The Lies of the Lemmings. Back in 1958, Disney produced a live-action nature adventure film entitled White Wilderness that won multiple Academy Awards. Directed by James Alger and narrated by Winston Hibbeler, White Wilderness was filmed over the course of 3 years. One of the most popular scenes in the film was that of lemmings supposedly jumping to their deaths into the Arctic Ocean in what appears as a mass suicide. The creepy reality is that Disney played God in these popular scenes of the production, and none of it actually took place anywhere near the Arctic Ocean. It was said that this was actually a migration tactic, and the lemmings were in fact just trying to cross the river below. In fact, Disney shipped the lemmings from their natural habitat into Calgary, and the award-winning scene is captured there. Even worse, the lemmings weren't choosing to jump. Instead, there was a paddle-off camera designed to force them off the cliff. To add insult to injury, these very same lemmings aren't even the right breed to migrate, making this adventure film a complete fiction.